The first patrol car arrived at 6:42 a.m., its headlights cutting through the pale fog, clinging to the riverbank. The officer didn't step out right away. He stayed in the driver's seat, radio pressed to his shoulder, staring at what lay half-submerged near the reeds. Even from a distance, he knew this wasn't a routine call. A woman's body had been found. By the time detectives arrived, the sun was creeping above the treeline, revealing a quiet stretch of land just outside the city. Too far for morning joggers, too close to be wilderness. Yellow tape fluttered in the cold air. The river moved slowly, indifferently, as if it had nothing to do with what it carried to shore. The woman was identified within the hour. Her name was Emily Carter. She was 32 years old, a marketing consultant. No criminal record, no known enemies, and, according to everyone who knew her, careful to a fault, which is what made the case immediately unsettling. Emily had vanished 3 days earlier. On Friday night, she'd left her apartment downtown after sending a text to her sister, heading home. Talk tomorrow. She never made it back. Her phone went dark at 9:18 p.m. No bank activity, no rideshare records, no signs of forced entry at her apartment. At first, police treated it as a missing person case. Adults disappear all the time, they said. But her sister, Lauren, refused to believe that. Emily never went off the grid. She never missed work. She never stopped answering calls. And she never trusted strangers. Yet here she was, pulled from a river with no ID, no phone, and no immediate explanation for how she got there. Detective Mark Reyes stood just beyond the tape, hands on his hips, eyes fixed on the waterline. 15 years on the job had taught him one thing. When a case looks simple at first glance, it almost never is. What do we know, he asked. His partner, Detective Alyssa Monroe, flipped through her notes. No witnesses so far. No obvious signs of a struggle at the scene. Misa's cause of death isn't immediately clear. They'll know more after the autopsy. Reyes nodded slowly. And her last movements? Still piecing it together. But here's the thing, Monroe said, lowering her voice. She didn't come here on her own. That much was obvious. Emily lived nearly 20 miles away. She had no reason to be near the river, especially at night. There were no bars, no restaurants, no friends nearby. Someone had brought her here, or dumped her here. Back at headquarters, the case file began to take shape. Emily Carter, raised in a quiet suburb, college-educated, well-liked, described by co-workers as kind but guarded. She volunteered on weekends. She kept her circle small. After a bad relationship in her 20s, she'd become cautious about who she let close, which made the next detail hit harder. Emily wasn't alone the night she disappeared. Security footage from her apartment building showed her leaving at 8:47 p.m. She wasn't running. She wasn't arguing. She was smiling, holding the door open for someone just out of frame. A man. The footage wasn't clear enough to catch his face, but his presence changed everything. Pull everyone she knew, Reyes ordered. Friends, co-workers, exes, anyone she met recently. The interviews started that afternoon. Her boss said Emily had been excited about a new client. Her neighbors reported nothing unusual. Her ex-boyfriend had an alibi and a clean break years earlier. Her friends described her as happy, focused, cautious. Then they got to Daniel right. Daniel was 35, a freelance photographer. Emily had met him 6 months earlier at a charity fundraiser. According to texts recovered from her laptop, they'd grown close quickly. He listened, offered support, shared stories about his own difficult past. He was patient, understanding, trusted. Daniel told detectives he last saw Emily on Thursday evening. Dinner, a walk, nothing unusual. He said they'd argued lightly about work stress, but parted on good terms. He claimed he went home alone. When asked where home was, Daniel hesitated just a fraction too long. An apartment across town, he said. I can give you the address. Reyes noticed the hesitation. Monroe noticed the way Daniel avoided eye contact when Emily's name was mentioned. Still, nothing concrete tied him to the river. Until the phone records came back. Emily's phone hadn't gone dark at 9:18 p.m. It had been turned off, manually, and just minutes before that, it had connected briefly to a cell tower near the riverbank. Too brief for a call. just long enough to register its presence. Too close to ignore. Investigators searched Daniel's apartment the next morning. It was spotless, almost aggressively so. No signs of a struggle, no obvious evidence. But something fell off. In the bedroom closet, tucked behind neatly arranged clothes, Monroe found a pair of women's shoes. They were Emily's size. Daniel claimed he didn't know how they got there. Said Emily must have left them during a previous visit. But her sister confirmed Emily had never stayed overnight. She'd mentioned Daniel was nice, but that she was taking things slow. The slow burn of suspicion turned hotter. Then came the autopsy report. Emily hadn't drowned. She died before she ever touched the water. The river hadn't killed her. It had only hidden her. Reyes stood silently as the medical examiner explained the findings. No defensive wounds. No signs of a prolonged struggle, which meant Emily likely hadn't realized she was in danger until it was too late. She trusted whoever she was with, the examiner said. That's the only way this makes sense. That night, as detectives reviewed evidence late into the evening, a new piece of data appeared in the case log. A storage unit. Emily's credit card had been used. Once, at 10:03 p.m. the night she disappeared. A small charge. Easy to miss. The location traced back to a self-storage facility less than 2 miles from Daniel's apartment. Reyes stared at the address on the screen. Get a warrant, he said. When they arrived at the facility, the manager led them down a narrow hallway lined with metal doors. The unit was registered in Daniel Wright's name. Paid in cash. Rented just 2 weeks earlier. The manager unlocked it and stepped back. Reyes pulled the door up. Inside, under the harsh fluorescent light, sat a neatly arranged collection of items. Emily's purse, her jacket, her phone, and a single object placed carefully on top of everything else. A photograph of Emily, taken without her knowing, and taped to the wall behind it, written in black marker, were 4 words that made Monroe's stomach drop. She was supposed to stay, and in that moment, they realized the case was far darker than anyone had imagined. The storage unit was sealed again within minutes, but what it revealed refused to stay contained. Back at headquarters, the evidence sat under sterile lights while detectives moved around it in near silence. Emily's phone, her purse, her jacket, neatly folded as if someone had taken their time. None of it looked damaged. None of it looked discarded in panic. It looked organized. That disturbed Detective Reyes more than blood ever did. This wasn't impulse, he said quietly. This was planning. The phone was the priority. Forensics worked through the night, bypassing security and reconstructing fragments of deleted data. By early morning, the first results came in. Text messages between Emily and Daniel. Weeks worth. Hundreds of them. At first glance, they looked normal. Sweet. Supportive. Daniel checked in constantly. Asked where she was, how she felt, whether she'd eaten. He framed it as care. But Monroe noticed something else. He always needed to know where she was, she said. And when she didn't respond fast enough, he spiraled. Reyes leaned in. One message stood out, sent 3 weeks before Emily disappeared. I just worry because people lie. You don't lie to me, right? Emily's reply came an hour later. Of course not. You're the only one I feel safe with. The room went quiet. Safety. Trust. Words that now felt cruel in hindsight. They reconstructed Emily's final day. She'd worked late, skipped dinner with her sister, said she had plans. Phone location data placed her near her apartment until just before 9. Then movement. Slow. Deliberate. Not rushed. She got into a car. Daniel owned a dark blue sedan registered under his name. Traffic cameras caught it passing through 3 intersections that night, heading east, toward the river, toward the storage facility. When detectives returned to Daniel's apartment with a second warrant, they found it empty. His landlord said Daniel hadn't come home the night before. Neighbors reported hearing movement around 2 a.m., doors closing, a car starting. No one thought much of it at the time. Now it meant everything. A bolo went out statewide. Daniel Wright was officially a person of interest. Not a suspect. Not yet. But Reyes knew it was only a matter of time. What unsettled him most was how clean Daniel's digital footprint was. No violent history. No threatening messages. No obvious financial motive. He wasn't desperate for money. He wasn't running from the law before this, which raised the most dangerous possibility of all. This wasn't about rage. It was about control. Lauren Carter sat across from Monroe in the interview room, hands wrapped around a paper cup she hadn't touched. She looked exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. "I told her to slow down," Lauren said. "I told her he seemed intense." "Did Emily ever say she felt afraid of him?" Monroe asked gently. Lauren shook her head. "No. She said he understood her, that he listened. After her last breakup, that meant everything." She hesitated, then added, "But she did say one thing. A week ago. She joked about it, but it stuck with me." Monroe waited. She said, "Daniel hates when I cancel plans. He says it makes him feel invisible." Invisible. Reyes had heard that word before, from offenders who believed they were owed attention. Love. Loyalty. They pulled Daniel's financials next. Credit cards. Bank withdrawals. Gas station receipts. He'd filled his tank the night Emily vanished. Paid cash. No cameras inside the station, but an exterior camera caught his car pulling out at 9:41 p.m. Emily's phone had already been turned off by then. The autopsy timeline narrowed the window further. Emily had died sometime between 9:30 and 10 p.m. Cause of death remained classified pending further tests, but there were no signs of prolonged violence. She didn't fight, the medical examiner said again, which means she didn't expect what happened. That realization hit Monroe hardest. Emily hadn't screamed, hadn't run, hadn't tried to escape. She'd been sitting next to someone she trusted. As pressure mounted, Daniel made his first move. At 3:17 a.m., a message was posted to an online forum under a username investigators later linked to him. It was vague, rambling, emotional. "Sometimes you do everything right, and they still leave. What are you supposed to do then?" The post didn't mention Emily, didn't mention a crime, but it read like a confession written in code. Then, less than an hour later, Daniel's phone pinged for the last time. A rural highway, near the state border. Reyes authorized a coordinated search. State troopers scanned roads. Local police checked motels. Every hour that passed increased the risk of Daniel disappearing, or worse, taking someone else with him. Because men like Daniel didn't see themselves as villains. They saw themselves as wronged. At sunrise, a break came from an unexpected place. A storage facility employee called in, shaken. He'd seen something on the news about Emily. Recognized her name. Recognized Daniel's photo. He came back, the man said, late last night, around midnight. He didn't go into the unit. Just stood there, like he was thinking. Security footage confirmed it. Daniel stood in front of the storage unit for nearly 10 minutes. Motionless. Head bowed. Then he turned and left. He hadn't taken anything, which meant whatever he needed from that unit was already gone. Monroe replayed the footage again and again. Daniel wasn't panicked. He wasn't hurried. He looked calm. Too calm. People revisit places that matter to them, she said. Graves. Homes. Scenes. Reyes nodded grimly. Or trophies. A second, deeper search of the unit revealed something they'd missed the first time. Hidden behind a false panel in the back wall. Inside was a small notebook. Handwritten. Dates. Times. Notes about Emily's schedule. Her routines. Where she parked. Who she talked to at work. Observations that went back months. Long before she believed she was in a relationship. The last entry was dated the night she died. She said she needed space. Just for a while. She doesn't understand that space is how people disappear. At the bottom of the page, written harder, darker, as if the pen had nearly torn through the paper, were 6 words. I won't let her leave. The room went silent. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was possession. As officers closed in on the border location, a new alert came through. Daniel's car had been spotted abandoned at a rest stop. Engine cold, doors unlocked. Inside, they found his phone. Smashed. Left behind on purpose. And taped to the dashboard was a folded piece of paper, addressed in neat handwriting. You don't understand. This isn't over. And for the first time since the case began, Reyes felt something colder than urgency. He felt fear. Because Daniel Wright hadn't been running from the truth. He'd been moving toward his next move.